Welcome to District Command Central, your go-to source for the latest news and updates on the Washington Commanders. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a play. If you're a Washington Commanders fan watching the final stretch of this brutal and injury-soaked 2025 season, it probably feels like every Sunday is a test of patience and emotional endurance. But step back for a second and look at the bigger picture, because this franchise is quietly setting the foundation for something far more promising. This year was never supposed to be about limping to the finish line with practice squad players and emergency starters. Yet, that is exactly what happened. The Commanders were forced to lean on depth, youth, and short-term fixes far earlier than planned. And while that made the win-loss column ugly, it also revealed something important about where this team is heading. What feels like survival mode right now is actually a transitional phase, one that could define the direction of the franchise heading into 2026. When you peel back the frustration, there are real and tangible reasons for hope, and they start with the most important position in football and ripple outward through the entire roster. The heartbeat of that optimism is quarterback Jayden Daniels, whose return to full health could completely change the tone of this team. Before injuries derailed his season, Daniel showed exactly why the organization believes he could be the long-term answer under center. In 7 games during the 2025 campaign, he threw for 1,262 yards, 8 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions, numbers that tell part of the story but not the most important part. What stood out was his poise in the middle of chaos, operating an offense that was constantly shuffling personnel due to injuries. He managed games, protected the football, and brought a sense of calm that Washington has desperately lacked in recent years. Even as the season unraveled around him, Daniels looked like a quarterback who belonged, someone capable of leading rather than simply surviving. For a franchise searching for identity, having a clear leader at quarterback is everything. A healthy Daniels heading into 2026 gives Washington direction, stability, and a chance to reconnect with the momentum that briefly appeared during the 2024 season. That alone changes how the future feels, not just for the front office, but for the locker room and the fan base as a whole. Another underappreciated silver lining of this painful season has been the forced development of young players who otherwise might have spent the year on the bench. Injuries opened doors, and several rookies and inexperienced players walked through them and got real National Football League reps that cannot be replicated in practice. Linebacker Jordan McGee emerged as one of the most encouraging stories, piling up 45 tackles and showing instincts and physicality that suggest he could become a reliable presence in the middle of the defense. His growth came out of necessity, but that experience could pay dividends when the games actually matter. Kay Medrano also saw the field and recorded 5 tackles. Modest numbers on paper, but meaningful steps for a player learning the speed and brutality of the professional level. On the offensive side, running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt became a legitimate bright spot, grinding out 671 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns while flashing vision and toughness. These young players were not supposed to carry weight this soon, yet they were forced into the fire, and that kind of baptism often accelerates development. When 2026 arrives, Washington will not just have younger players, it will have younger players who have already been tested. That growth is even more significant when you consider the flexibility the Commanders are about to have as they head into the offseason. Washington is staring at 28 pending free agents, including 4 currently on injured reserve, which gives the front office a rare opportunity to reshape the roster with intention rather than desperation. This is where the franchise gets to decide who fits the future vision and who is simply part of surviving a difficult year. Veterans like tight end Zach Ertz, wide receiver Deebo Samuel, and edge rusher Von Miller all face uncertain futures, and those decisions will define how Washington balances experience with youth. Keeping the right veterans could stabilize a young core, while moving on from others could free resources to invest elsewhere. This is not a teardown, it is a recalibration. The mistakes of the past came from clinging to short-term fixes without a long-term plan. Now, the Commanders have a chance to be deliberate, aligning contracts, roles, and expectations around a clear timeline that centers on 2026 and beyond. When you put it all together, the story of this season shifts from pure frustration to cautious optimism. 2025 was about survival, about getting through the storm with as much information as possible about who can play, who can lead, and who fits the culture. 2026 can be about intention, about building something that makes sense from top to bottom. A healthy quarterback who has already shown leadership, young players who were forced to grow faster than expected, and a roster situation that offers real flexibility are not guarantees of success, but they are ingredients for hope. For fans who have endured disappointment after disappointment, that matters. The Commanders are not as far away as they feel right now. And if the lessons of this painful year are applied correctly, brighter days may finally be more than just a promise. If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts on the Commanders' latest moves. We want to hear from you. The rumor that started quietly inside league circles suddenly exploded into a full-blown conversation when Terry McLaurin, a player known more for professionalism than controversy, finally allowed his frustration to surface in a way nobody expected. According to whispers spreading through locker rooms and studio microphones alike, McLaurin spoke with a tone that felt less like a complaint and more like a release, as if years of holding back had reached a breaking point. The shocking part was not anger or disrespect, but the calm clarity with which he allegedly pointed fingers at the Washington Commanders front office, suggesting that silence had only enabled patterns that players were no longer willing to accept. What makes this situation feel so explosive is the identity of the voice behind it. McLaurin has long been viewed as the embodiment of accountability and loyalty, a receiver who shows up, works, leads, and rarely brings drama into public view. That reputation is exactly why these rumors hit so hard. When a player with nothing to gain from noise decides to speak anyway, people listen. The story circulating suggests that McLaurin questioned the long-term vision of the organization, hinting that mixed messages from the top have created uncertainty not only for stars, but for the entire roster trying to understand where the franchise is truly headed. Inside this speculation, the language attributed to McLaurin feels deliberate and piercing. He allegedly spoke about commitment, not just as a word used in press conferences, but as an action reflected in planning, communication, and trust. The implication, according to those close to the situation, is that players have felt caught between promises of stability and decisions that signal constant reset. In that tension, motivation erodes, and even the most dedicated leaders begin to wonder if their prime years are being maximized or merely endured. What adds another layer of intrigue is how this moment is being framed by insiders as a turning point rather than a tantrum. McLaurin, the rumor goes, did not lash out emotionally. Instead, he delivered a controlled message that felt almost calculated, as if he understood that his voice carried weight beyond his own contract or role. In doing so, he may have opened a door for others who felt similarly but lacked the standing or courage to say it out loud. Around the league, players are said to be quietly nodding along, recognizing a familiar frustration that transcends one locker room. The Commanders' front office, at least in this speculative narrative, is portrayed as increasingly distant from the pulse of its own team. Decisions made behind closed doors may make sense on spreadsheets and long-term projections, but players live in the immediate reality of preparation, sacrifice, and physical toll. When that reality clashes with unclear direction, resentment grows. McLaurin's rumored critique seems to center on that disconnect, suggesting that leadership has spoken about culture without fully committing to the consistency required to build one. From a YouTuber's perspective, this is the kind of story that forces you to slow down and really unpack the implications. This is not just about one star venting frustration. It is about what happens when a respected voice challenges the narrative an organization has been selling to fans and media. If McLaurin truly questioned the internal alignment of the Commanders, then every move the franchise makes from here on will be analyzed through that lens. Silence from management, in this context, only fuels the speculation further. There's also a human element that often gets lost in headlines. McLaurin is described by teammates as someone who believes deeply in preparation and purpose. For someone like that, disillusionment does not arrive overnight. It builds slowly, moment by moment, as expectations fail to meet reality. The rumors suggest that his words were less about anger and more about disappointment, which in many ways cuts deeper. Anger can fade, but disappointment lingers, especially when it comes from unmet potential rather than outright failure. Across the NFL landscape, analysts are quietly debating what this means for the Commanders' image among players. Organizations talk endlessly about becoming destinations, places where talent wants to stay and others want to join. When a cornerstone player publicly or semi-publicly questions leadership, even through rumor and speculation, that image takes a hit. Agents listen. Players listen. They read between the lines and ask themselves whether stability is real or just marketing language. Another fascinating layer is how McLaurin's supposed comments reflect a broader shift in player mentality. Modern athletes are less willing to accept being passive pieces in long-term experiments that lack transparency. They want communication, honesty, and a sense that their sacrifices align with a coherent plan. The rumor positions McLaurin as a voice of that mindset, someone who understands that leadership is not just about effort on the field, but about demanding clarity off it. For fans, this story lands with a mix of validation and anxiety. Many have felt similar frustration watching the franchise struggle to define itself. Hearing that a respected player might share those concerns can feel like confirmation that the issues are deeper than play calling or roster talent. At the same time, it raises fear about what comes next. When trust erodes between players and management, the consequences can ripple far beyond one season or one contract negotiation. What keeps this rumor alive is the absence of an immediate, definitive denial. In the world of professional sports, silence is rarely accidental. Whether intentional or not, the lack of a strong response allows the narrative to breathe and evolve. Every press interaction, every vague answer, becomes part of the story. McLaurin does not even need to repeat the message for it to continue shaping perception, because the idea has already taken root. Speculation also points toward an internal reckoning. Front offices pride themselves on control, on shaping narratives and managing assets. A respected player challenging that control, even indirectly, forces reflection. Either the organization doubles down on its approach or it reconsiders how it communicates with its leaders in the locker room. McLaurin's rumored stance suggests that players are no longer satisfied with being reassured without being genuinely involved. From the outside, it may look like another chapter in the long saga of a franchise searching for identity. From the inside, however, it could be the moment when polite patience gives way to honest confrontation. McLaurin's name attached to that possibility is what makes it resonate. He is not known for chasing attention, which is why attention now chases him. As this story continues to circulate, one thing is clear. Whether every detail is accurate or not, the sentiment feels real to many around the league. It taps into a collective understanding that talent alone does not build success. Alignment does. Trust does. Direction does. When any of those feel missing, even the quietest leaders eventually find their voice. In the end, this rumor is less about scandal and more about accountability. It challenges the Commanders to respond not with slogans, but with actions that reflect genuine commitment to their players. It challenges fans to listen beyond surface narratives. And it challenges the league to recognize that the most powerful statements are not always shouted. Sometimes they're spoken calmly by someone who has finally decided that staying silent would be the loudest mistake of all. Thanks for tuning into District Command Central. Make sure to subscribe and follow us for all the Commanders news you need. Until next time, keep the faith and hail to the Commanders.